Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely, let's do it.
Today, we're taking a look at the life and works of the 15th century Indian mystic and poet Kabir.
Kabir.
You know, a real fascinating figure.
Yeah.
And you've given us a collection of excerpts from scholarly works about him. Seems like you're looking for a blend of biographical details and a glimpse into his unique philosophy.
Right.
And I have to say, the source material itself is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Excerpts from this book, which seems to be like a scholarly analysis of Kabir's life and work, including some of his poetry.
Yeah.
But even just glancing through these excerpts, there are already some really intriguing questions that pop up.
Yeah, like...
Was Kabir Hindu or Muslim?
Yeah, was he?
Was he even raised by humans?
That's a great question.
And why on earth did he compare the world to a robber? Lots to unpack here.
Definitely.
So let's start with the mystery of Kabir's origins. Right off the bat, the sources paint a pretty conflicting picture.
It really is a puzzle.
It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Some say he was the child of a Muslim weaver couple,
Okay.
miraculously found in a lotus flower. Talk about an entrance.
Yeah.
But then other accounts claim he was the son of a Brahmin widow,
Oh, wow.
born from the palm of her hand. I mean, how do you even begin to reconcile those stories?
Right. It almost feels like stepping into one of his poems where the ordinary and extraordinary are just kind of blended together.
It really does.
Yeah.
But I have to say, this ambiguity, it's more than just an interesting historical quirk.
Yeah, I think it kind of speaks to Kabir's core message.
Yeah.
This idea of transcending labels and embracing a sort of universal spirituality.
Absolutely.
And, you know, even his name Kabir adds another layer to this,
Right.
which is of Muslim origin.
Exactly. That just kind of adds to the whole mystique.
For sure.
It makes you wonder if those conflicting stories were, you know, almost intentional. Like a way to kind of challenge people's assumptions right from the start.
Like, don't get hung up on where I came from.
Yeah.
Focus on what I'm saying. Speaking of which, one image that really stood out to me was that of Kabir as the weaver poet.
Oh, absolutely. This idea of this mystic poet who was also working as a weaver, it just seems so simple yet so profound.
Yeah, and he even refused to give it up, you know, when a quasi urged him to abandon his mean employment.
It's true. And there's that incredible poem, too,
Which one?
Shabda 64,
Yeah.
where he actually uses the loom as a metaphor for the entire universe.
Oh, yeah. He compares the threads to this interconnectedness of all things
Exactly.
with God as the weaver.
It gives you chills just thinking about it.
It does. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's more than just a clever metaphor.
Oh, definitely.
Weaving requires all this, you know, skill and patience, attention to detail. It's almost like a form of meditation in itself.
Right. You're so focused on each individual thread,
Yeah,
but you also have to keep the whole tapestry in mind,
exactly.
like this beautiful balance.
I think you've hit on something really important there. For Kabir, spirituality wasn't something you found in a temple or a holy book.
Yeah,
It was in the everyday,
right in the fabric of life itself.
woven into life.
Yeah, and this idea seems to be at the heart of so many of his actions.
Like,
Like when he offered Ganges water to a Brahmin in his weaver's cup.
oh, that's one of the most well-known stories about Kabir, and for good reason. Talk about a challenge to empty rituals and blind faith.
Right. The Brahmin was totally horrified.
Yeah, because a weaver's cup would have been considered, you know, impure, according to those rigid social and religious hierarchies of the time.
It's true, but for Kabir, the purity of the vessel was almost irrelevant.
Like, what mattered was the purity of the heart, the intention behind the action.
Exactly. It's a really powerful message.
Right.
And it resonates even today,
It does. Like, how many times do we get caught up in the outward forms of things and forget the essence?
all the time.
It's so easy to do,
It is.
which I think is what makes Kabir so relevant. He constantly reminds us to look beyond the surface, to question our assumptions, to seek the truth within.
And not just blindly following rituals or dogma,
Yeah,
but to cultivate a real, genuine connection with the divine.
a connection that's rooted in love.
Ah, yes. Love. That's another one of Kabir's core teachings that really resonated with me. He talks about love as the path to union with God,
Right.
the very essence of God.
Yeah. He didn't see love as just a feeling. It was the state of being, a way of experiencing the world.
And it wasn't limited to, you know, just romantic love or familial love.
Right. It encompassed all beings.
All of creation.
Remember that powerful quote, "When I was there was none else. All were within me."
Yes. It's such a beautiful concept. It speaks to this idea of oneness, the inherent divinity within each of us.
And it challenges us to see ourselves in others, to recognize the interconnectedness of all life. It's a radical idea even today.
Absolute. But that's the power of Kabir.
It really is.
He challenges us to think differently, to move beyond the limitations of our ego and embrace a much wider perspective.
It's true.
And he does all of this through poetry, not through some grand philosophical treatise or sermon
Yeah, through these simple verses.
that use the everyday language of 14th century India.
And there's another fascinating aspect of his work, this deliberate choice to write in the vernacular, the language of the people, rather than the formal Sanskrit used by the religious elite.
That's a bold statement.
It is almost like reclaiming the power of language,
Yeah.
making spiritual truths accessible to everyone.
It makes you wonder if that made some people uncomfortable.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
Challenging the status quo rarely goes unnoticed.
That's for sure, but that's what makes Kabir so revolutionary.
He wasn't afraid to shake things up, to push boundaries, to invite people to awaken to a deeper understanding of themselves and the world around them.
Right. He makes you question everything.
It makes me wonder how his words were received back then.
Mm-hmm.
Did people listen? Did they understand?
It's a great question, and one we'll explore further as we, delve deeper into Kabir's life and the impact of his teachings.
I can't wait. We'll continue our deep dive into the world of Kabir in just a moment. It's amazing to me how many of the stories about Kabir involve these everyday situations. He takes these really mundane things
Right.
and turns them into these profound lessons. Like that one where he's trying to sell a piece of cloth for 5 takas, but he can't. But then this broker comes along and sells it for 11.
Just by asking for more.
Just like that.
Kabir even turned that into a poem,
It's true.
lamenting how the world believes a lie
It's so true, though.
more readily than the truth.
It's funny because it reminds me of those street performers.
Oh, yeah.
The ones who use sleight of hand to trick you.
Right.
And you're being tricked.
Yeah.
But you can't help but be amazed by it.
It's true.
And I feel like Kabir is doing something similar.
Yeah.
He's using these everyday occurrences to point out how easily we're fooled by appearances.
Like, wake up. Don't be so easily swayed by what you see on the surface. Look deeper.
And he wasn't afraid to use some pretty strong imagery to make his point.
Right.
Remember the story where he gives his clothes away to a freezing sadhu?
Oh, yeah. And when the sadhu complains that half the cloth isn't enough to keep him warm,
Right.
Kabir just gives him the rest. No hesitation.
It's like, talk about detachment from material possessions.
Yeah, but I think it's more than just that.
Oh, definitely.
It's about recognizing the needs of others and responding with compassion.
You're right.
It's a beautiful illustration of Kabir's belief that true wealth isn't about material possessions,
Yeah.
but it's about the richness of the spirit.
Speaking of the spirit,
Yes.
we can't forget about the stories of Kabir's disciples.
And there are often unconventional paths to following him.
Sometimes downright funny,
Oh, yeah.
like that Brahmin Ramdas.
Oh, right. The one who wanted to see a vision of Vishnu.
Yes. And Kabir tells him Vishnu will appear at his house.
So he prepares this huge feast.
Right.
But instead of a deity, a muddy buffalo shows up and eats everything.
I can only imagine his disappointment.
He runs back to Kabir to complain. And what does Kabir say? That was Vishnu.
It makes you question everything you think you know about holiness.
It really does. Makes you wonder if maybe the divine can manifest in any form.
Even something as ordinary as a buffalo.
Messy, muddy buffalo.
We have these ideas in our minds about what's sacred. And Kabir comes along and flips the script.
It's a good reminder to be open to the unexpected,
For sure.
to see the divine in those unlikely places. And it's not just about recognizing the divine.
It's about how we respond to it.
Right. Like Sheikh Taki,
Oh, the Muslim ruler.
who kept encountering Kabir over and over again.
And each time, Kabir offers him guidance.
But he doesn't fully commit
It took 3 encounters.
before he realized he should just drop everything and follow Kabir.
It's like sometimes it takes a few nudges from the universe
Right.
before we finally wake up and pay attention. But Sheikh Taki's story is interesting too,
Why?
because it shows that Kabir's influence wasn't just limited to common people.
Yeah, he had followers from all walks of life.
Even powerful rulers were drawn to his wisdom and that message of love and unity.
Definitely. And, that message of unity often came in the form of a challenge to the orthodoxies of his time.
Oh, yeah.
Like the story where he pours water on the floor of the palace.
And when the Sultan asks him why,
Kabir says he's helping a Brahmin who burned his foot miles away.
at Jagannath,
And, of course, it turns out to be true.
it's like he had this incredible ability to transcend the limitations of time and space.
It's wild.
I think the story is also about Kabir's refusal to play by the rules.
Yeah, he didn't conform to expectations at all.
He had his own way of seeing the world.
And he wasn't afraid to let people know it.
And let's not forget that poem where he compares the world to a robber.
Such a powerful image.
It really is.
It speaks to how easily we get caught up in material things.
He talks about Maya, the illusion of the material world,
As a robber that steals our attention.
and keeps us trapped in a cycle of desire and suffering.
It's a powerful concept, for sure.
Mm.
It's so easy to get caught up in the pursuit of wealth and status and pleasure.
And all those things that don't actually bring lasting fulfillment.
Right.
Kabir is urging us to see through the illusion
To detach from the things that bind us.
and focus on what truly matters.
And the cultivation of the spirit.
And he did all of this in a time of such turmoil,
Yeah, think about India in the 15th century.
like a melting pot of different faiths and cultures often clashing,
The Bijak even mentions Sultan Sikandar Lodi.
who tried to suppress Hindu practices.
It's true.
And yet here's Kabir,
This weaver poet who dared to preach a message of unity and tolerance.
a message that transcended all those religious boundaries.
It's remarkable.
He even had a following in the Sultan's court.
It's true. It speaks volumes about the power of his message and the universality of his appeal.
Right. His poetry wasn't just for Hindus or Muslims.
It was for anyone seeking a deeper truth.
A path to liberation. But how did he manage to spread his message so effectively? I mean, literacy was limited back then.
It's true.
There was no internet, no printing presses.
Right. It wasn't like today.
So how did he do it?
Well, I think that's where his choice of language becomes even more important.
Okay.
He didn't write in that formal Sanskrit of the religious elite.
Yeah.
He wrote in the language of the people,
The language of the marketplace.
the language of the home.
The language of the heart.
His poetry is full of these colloquialisms, wordplay, even slang. So relatable.
Accessible to a much wider audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about accessibility,
It was a deliberate choice.
a challenge to authority.
Reclaiming the power of language for the common people.
By using the language of the people, Kabir was saying that spiritual truths don't belong to any one group or institution. They're available to everyone, regardless of background or social standing.
It makes me think about how we communicate today. Sometimes we get so caught up in all the jargon and complex language
Right.
that we lose sight of the simplicity of the message.
Yeah.
And I think Kabir reminds us that true wisdom is often found in the simplest of things.
Expressed in a way that everyone can understand. But how do we understand his impact on the world? He's more than just a poet, right?
He is.
We'll explore that in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
The lasting legacy of Kabir.
You know what's amazing to me? How the Bijak isn't just a collection of poems.
It's true.
It's woven through with these incredible stories and anecdotes that give us these glimpses into Kabir's life.
Yeah, his personality.
Like, you really get a sense of who he was,
Yeah.
not just what he thought.
For sure.
Like that story about Kabir and Sultan Sikandar Lodi.
Oh, yeah, the one where the Sultan tries to silence him?
Throws him in a river.
A fire.
He even puts him at the feet of a maddened elephant.
And he's unharmed through it all.
It sounds almost mythical.
Right.
Like, are we meant to take it literally?
It's a good question.
Or is it more of a metaphor
Yeah.
for Kabir's unwavering faith?
His ability to withstand any challenge.
Either way, it's such a powerful image.
It really
His
is.
courage, his refusal to be silenced.
Yeah, standing up to a powerful ruler like that.
Exactly. And then there's that story about Kabir's visit to the Raja of Gujarat.
Oh, right. The one where the Raja and his wife are desperate for a son.
They beg Kabir for a blessing.
But Kabir's response is not what they expected.
Not at all. Instead of offering a prayer or something,
Yeah.
he recites this poem criticizing the world's obsession with material desires,
Calling them out for their attachment to worldly things.
reminding them that true fulfillment comes from seeking something higher.
Yeah.
But he does eventually grant them a son, right?
He does.
With a bit of a twist.
He promises them a son born of his essence.
A child with a lion's face.
It's almost as if he's challenging their expectations.
Yeah, their definition of what's normal.
Or acceptable.
And of course, the queen gives birth to a child with a lion's face.
Horrified, she abandons the baby in the jungle
But Kabir finds him,
and brings him back to the Raja.
forces the Raja to confront his own prejudices,
It's a powerful lesson about acceptance.
about seeing the divine in the unconventional.
It makes you wonder what those stories meant to people who first heard them.
I imagine it was a mix of emotions.
Probably.
Shock, amusement, maybe even inspiration.
Yeah, I think Kabir was a master at using these everyday scenarios
To jolt people out of their complacency.
and to get them to see the world differently.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Kabir, what are some of the key takeaways for our listeners?
I think it's about more than just understanding Kabir's poetry.
Oh, definitely.
It's about applying his wisdom to our own lives.
Looking for the extraordinary in the ordinary.
recognizing the interconnectedness of all things,
Questioning our assumptions.
embracing a path of love and compassion,
Just like Kabir did.
even in the face of adversity,
He reminds us that true spirituality isn't about escaping the world.
but about finding the divine within it,
In every interaction, every experience,
every breath,
his poetry calls us to awaken to that truth,
to challenge dogma,
to break free from the limitations of our ego.
and to live a life guided by love, compassion, and that relentless pursuit of inner understanding.
It's a reminder that the search for meaning is a lifelong journey.
And the answers we seek are often found in the most unexpected places.
Just like Kabir himself wrote, "If you are a true merchant, open a true market. Sweep well within and throw the rubbish far away."
Wow, what a powerful image.
It really is.
To sweep away all the clutter,
All the preconceived notions.
all the fears and desires that cloud our vision,
Exactly.
to open ourselves up to a new way of seeing.
New way of being.
Thank you for joining us on this journey in the world of Kabir.
It's been an incredible deep dive.